Welcome to my classroom on environmental sociology. Here I am going to highlight on various discourses and debates on the same. What is environmental sociology? Environmental sociology is a subject where we can find both science and social sciences and humanities. So my argument is we have already studied and taught our students environmental history. Environmental science is something where we have already applied the scientific approaches. But when we talk on environmental sociology, that means we are trying to experiment with science and arts, or in other words, we must say we are trying to have an experimentation of scientific knowledge with social sciences or scientific knowledge with the perspectives of social sciences. So here I must say that when we talk on environment, certain points usually come into our mind. That is, when we first started talking on environment, this trend of discussing environment started since the last century onwards. Before that, people they used to write on environment. They also launched protest to protect environment. But the documentation of environment started from 20th century onwards. And in various academic writings and also in discourses, in debates, we find how environment started taking an important place. From 21st century onwards, we have seen that environment has become an important arena where people are trying to merge their academic insights with the need for creating a better world. That means environment and the thoughts for environment have become, what I can say, a significant episode in the sphere of policy making. And if I would like to say something on environment from the present context of India, then I must say that this concept is something where we are not only dealing with science, we are dealing with awareness, we are dealing with culture, we are dealing with religion, we are dealing with emotion. If Ganges is a river which is famous for its religious significance, but for the environmentalists, the river Ganges is a place where we should have a lot of reforms so that the water of river Ganges could be pured and people could be able to use that water. Because water pollution is a very pertinent problem and where we can keep river Ganges as a case study. So here we are trying to highlight certain incidents or events which are ongoing, which are very much relevant, and through those events we are trying to understand the essence of environmental sociology. It will also help the students to have a better insight of the subject. I must say that in India there are a number of projects on dam constructions, and people they protested against those projects. Why? Because many people they have to leave their ancestral properties, their land, just because of these dam constructions. On the other hand, government always have this kind of idea that if government could construct more dams, that would facilitate irrigation as well as would regularize water supply system and could enhance the system of electricity or hydraulic power. So here we find how science always has a confrontation with emotions, because through science we would like to promote urbanization, we would like to promote technology, we would like to progress further, but we are doing all this at the cost of environment. So from this perspective, knowing environment is very much important, and the economic, social, cultural factors which are behind the understanding of environment is perhaps making our discussions more interesting, which is also known as environmental sociology. And here we are working joined hands with the scientists, with the climatologists, with the anthropologists, with the politicians, with the social scientists, and many more. So I hope that my students will surely like my discussions on this particular theme, where I would also like to explore more avenues with this regard. Dear students, now I would like to highlight something on history of environment. Here I would like to mention the book by Daniel Hedrick, The Tools of Empire. This book will help us to understand how technology had changed the entire scenario of progress and civilization, and where we had to pay a lot for environment, because all these were done at the cost of environment. So with this regard, I would like to tell something on history of environment. In India, environment was something which was very much worshipped and cherished during the ancient period. And we have seen how the ancient people, they used to worship the natural forces like water, fire, soil, and all. That trend was very much common in the Indus Valley civilization, when we have seen that how they celebrated Mother Goddess, the goddess of fertility, the goddess of soil. And if we take a look to the Vedic civilization, then we have seen the presence of the gods like Indra, Varuna, Agni, Marut, and all. And they were the representatives of fire, of wind, of water, etc. So why I am saying all these things? Because it would help you to understand that how environment was a significant part of our life, and what was the role of the people with regard of accepting environment in their daily lives. So when we have seen the Protestant religions, they emerged like Buddhism and Jainism. There also we have seen in the ancient texts of these Protestant religions that the mention of environment was very much there. Apart from that, in the tribal sources and also in the Dravidian culture, that means in the non-Aryan culture, we have seen people worshipped environment, they wrote about environment. Even in Indian philosophy, we have seen Prakriti and Purush, where Prakriti means not only woman, it is also portraying environment. So this is something where we have also seen cultural assimilation or cultural pluralism. When the people from the other places or other countries, they came to our country, like if we talk on the Muslims or the Greeks and others, when they came to our country, they conquered and they became a part of our culture. They also, in their own way, assimilated environment in their civilization, or what we can say their way of looking at environment perhaps got confronted with our ways of looking at environment. Here I must say that when the British came, they came with new technologies. And if I would like to quote David Arnold, that they were not only trying to colonizing our body with the help of Western medicine, they were also trying to colonize our minds with the help of Western education. Their perceptions on environment, what I think, were a bit different from what we had in the ancient and in the medieval period. Definitely, on the one hand, they showed concerns for environment, like how to protect environment, how to protect ecology. On the other hand, they were much more interested to exploit the natural resources, to exploit environment so that they could have better urbanization. Or we can say that they were trying to establish capitalism or the offshoots of imperialism, what were very much common through the reflections of their technological advancements, and they devastated, they destroyed environment. And for us, for the native people, environment was something which was also a part of their cultural identity. But the British, they not only destroyed environment, they cut the woods to get what we can say the timber for railway construction. They also made the people compelled to vacate their motherland, the environment or the nature, which were, what I can say, very much part of their existence. So it was a time where we have seen like more systematic ways of exploiting environment were very much pertinent, like how the British, they utilized the natural resources and they made their stance very much specific that they were here to drain the wealth of our country, where the natural resources were also a part of it. So this history is definitely a fascinating history, and if we read the history of environment through the ages, from ancient to the colonial period, we will be definitely able to identify the changes and the transformations which we have witnessed, and how it helped to evolve the history of environment and later on the contours of environmental sociology in the sphere of academic discourses. Now I would like to say something on the research methodologies on environment. Here I would like to say, when we pursue researches on environment, when we are trying to know like how can we make environment better, how can we make environment what I can say protected, then we always look for interdisciplinary researches. So the methodology which we would like to follow in this regard, if we talk on environmental sociology, that would be always a combination of both qualitative and quantitative approaches. Qualitative means that when we are trying to know environment from the perspectives of social sciences like sociology, political science, history, humanities, etc. And when we talk on quantitative methods, that mean we are trying to know environment from the perspectives of science. So here we have seen anthropologists, they are trying to know environment, they are doing community research. The historians, they are trying to decipher the history of environment. The people who are the part of political science stream or the branch of knowledge, they are trying to know environment with the help of policy analysis, and the scientists like the microbiologists, the people who are researching on atmospheric sciences and many more, they are trying to know environment from its root. So here we find a room for interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary researches, and the methodology is very much varied, and I hope that the students would also enjoy learning environmental sociology, and definitely in future they would also stay for doing academic researches with this regard. Now I would like to say something on the debates and discourses. Dear students, if I would like to start with the debates, then first I want to highlight the first wave of debates on environment. So if we see the environmental movements in India, especially in the post-colonial period, then we have seen the movements which were very much emotional. Definitely those movements started with some political demands, or there were some political reasons which made those movements inevitable. But the involvement of humans in those movements especially made them special, very much close to our hearts. So in the first wave of discussions or debates on environment, we have seen how the scholars like Vandana Shiva, they tried to relate environment with human emotions. If I give you the example of the concept of ecofeminism, which was uttered by Vandana Shiva when she tried to explain the Chipko movement, where we have seen how the women at Himachal, they hugged the trees so that nobody could be able to cut off the same. So here we must say, through this concept of ecofeminism, Vandana Shiva, she wanted to make an intimate connection between human emotions and environment. According to her, like women, they are very much famous or they are very much appreciated for their tolerance. So nature is also having the same quality. Nature is also tolerant until and unless the exploitations become very much extensive. Then nature definitely replies. But here we find like the patience and the level of tolerance which the women usually they have as a part of their instinct, that can be compared with nature, though nature is something where we cannot see that kind of lively affection or that kind of liveliness. In nature we have flora, we have fauna, but definitely we have the mountains, we have the soil, we have the rivers. So all are not alive. But still, here we can have a hypothetical understanding where nature can be compared with women, and sometimes we celebrate nature, we celebrate earth by saying earth is our mother or mother earth. So these ideological concepts were very much famous in the first wave of debates and discussions on environment, where people, apart from feminism, they also talked on the ideologies of Gandhiji, that means giving emphasis on non-violence, and also the Marxian ideology of class struggle and class exploitation. In the second wave of debates and discussions on environment, we have seen like how the controlling of environment became important for the social scientists like Gadgil and Greenough. They wanted to say like how we, the human beings, are trying to control or trying to make environment as our property, and this kind of exploitation is very much vast, and that is making our position cruel in the society, but perhaps there is no one who could challenge our position. So it was something like that: we are destroying nature, we are devastating environment because we want to be prosper. So here we find some kind of a hint towards exploitation of nature by the human beings for their own sake. And it is also something where we have seen how capitalism is controlling our minds. We have become the slaves of capitalism. That's why we have become emotionless. We are not thinking to protect environment, and perhaps we are so unfortunate that we couldn't think about the consequences, that one day nature would definitely give us the replies and we will all perish. Because when we have earthquake, when we have flood, all these are the replies of nature towards our mentality, where we always try to extract nature, but we never try to protect nature. So this is something which is very common, but definitely there are other instances also where we find that we have movements to save environment, but they are scanty in nature, I must say. The general view or the general idea of environment for the commoners is to exploit environment, to extract environment so that we could have a better life. In the third wave of debates and discussions on environment, we have seen like that many more cultural approaches are included in this particular field, where we are trying to know environment from the perspectives of caste, class, gender, and many more. Here we have seen the social scientists like Agarwal and all, how they tried to define environment or the sociology of environment from the lenses of gender, from the lenses of folklore, from the lenses of religion, culture, and many more. So here we have seen the tendency to know gender-based environment, to know religion-based environment, to know the relationships between culture and environment become very much pertinent in the eyes of the academicians. So here we find more vast and lucid approach towards the debates and discussions on environment. And my question is to my students that why Vandana Shiva is famous. Did she talk for ecofeminism, number one, feminism, nationalism, or globalization? So the answer is Vandana Shiva. She talked on ecofeminism. So before going to finish my lecture, I want my students to learn about the various movements on environment in colonial and post-colonial India. The movement started in colonial period, like how the native people, the colonized, they tried to protect environment, and that legacy was also continued in the post-colonial period by us. So here we had many movements. I told about the movement by the women, especially by the women of Himachal, and that movement was known as Chipko movement. Apart from the Chipko movement, one movement which grabbed my attention always, that was the Narmada Bachao movement or the Save Narmada movement. There were many more movements which took place in post-colonial India, And I hope that students, they would have a self-study to understand the scope of these movements and how can we relate those movements to environmental sociology for our better understanding. In the conclusion, I must say that we study environment, we discuss various debates, and we try to highlight a lot of discourses on environment, and while doing so, we want to contribute our insights for policy making so that our government could be able to have more human policies towards environment, where the activists should take an important role than the politicians. I hope that my students, they definitely enjoy my lecture, and if you have any question, you can always get back to me through mail. And one more thing which I would like to say with a positive note, that if you would like to save environment, then think about environment. Without thinking, it's not possible for you to implementing your ideas, which are perhaps precious. Thank you.